Hi, and welcome to week 6. This week we'll be reading Old Testament prophecy, and you'll find that I have a particular way that I want you to explore prophetic passages from the Old Testament, and that is highly dependent upon context and then interpretation in the New Testament. But with that, we have 4 goals. First, to create a hermeneutical methodology or biblical interpretation methodology for the interpretation of biblical texts. Second, to apply interpretive methods in the evaluation of a prophetic text. So we're going to learn how to interpret, and then you're going to, through the assignments, get practice interpreting prophetic texts. Then I want you to demonstrate an understanding for the importance of historical context in correctly interpreting prophecy, and then finally to analyze an assigned biblical passage and apply the hermeneutical meaning to a contemporary situation. So that brings our hermeneutical process completed, which is, one, we want to know first what the original author intended in his original context. Then we want to know the theological, or understand the theological meaning, both in the Old Testament context and in the New Testament context. And then finally, we want to look towards application for the modern church. And in short, that is what the entire course is about, is really those 4 steps. You now have many of the tools, so we're going to begin to apply them in different ways. We have 2 assignments and a discussion post this week. And so applying historical context to prophecy is our first assignment. And I want you to explore the historical context of a passage, which is essential to understanding the meaning intended by the original author. In this case, we're going to look at Isaiah 9, verses 2 to 7. And I want you to create a 3 to 4 page paper exploring that passage. The paper should include an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. So I'm looking for a solid biblical analysis of this passage. The body of the paper should unpack the historical setting of the prophet Isaiah and the context for the Song of Thanksgiving. The body should also discuss an awareness of the initial fulfillment of the prophecy in verses 6 to 7. So we're going to look at the passage, and then we're going to analyze it in light of its initial fulfillment and understand that there was an initial fulfillment of this prophecy, and then a understanding and discussion of the ultimate fulfillment within the New Testament. And that brings together a lot of the things we talked about in the last couple of weeks, which is the original author had one idea as he's writing, and we see this clearly in Isaiah. But then we also find that in light of progressive revelation, the New Testament authors see an ultimate or ongoing fulfillment, in some ways a typological fulfillment of that passage in the New Testament. The conclusion of the paper should summarize your findings of your analysis and offer an application for the modern church. The use of outside research is expected in this assignment. Then our second paper is a types of prophecy worksheet. So instead of an in-depth paper, I'm wanting you to look at several passages, and according to Klein, there are several types of prophecy. I want you to complete the attached worksheet using 10 types of prophecy. Then provide a biblical example for each and an explanation of why your biblical example fits the category. So it's not enough to say, here is my type and here is my passage. I want you to go, here is my type, here is my passage, and this is why my passage fits, which shows that you have understood the different types of prophecy. Be sure to include a conclusion discussing what you learned and adding personal reflection. An example of what I'm looking for is in Jeremiah 28, verses 12 to 14. After the prophet Hananiah had broken the yoke off the neck of the prophet Jeremiah, the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah, "Go and tell Hananiah, this is what the Lord says. You have broken a wooden yoke, but in its place you will get an iron yoke. This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. I will put an iron yoke on the necks of all these nations to make them serve Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and they will serve him. I will even give him control over the wild animals." So it's a pretty disturbing passage where God is saying that all of Judah and all of Israel will come under Babylonian control. So this passage includes a prophetic commission, go tell Hananiah. In addition, the prophecy gives a reason for the disaster. You have analysis, therefore I have. The disaster is that all nations will be subject to the rule of Babylon. And then as you look at the historical context, it is a time when Hananiah represented the message of peace being proclaimed by the lying prophets, encouraging resistance to Babylon and false hopes of a quick end to the political crisis, the restoration not only of the temple vessels, but of King Jehoiachin to the throne. So I'm wanting you to look at the prophecy, identify what kind of prophecy it is and why, and then give me a little bit about the historical context of what's going on within this prophetic message. And then finally, we have a discussion post, which is to evaluate modern prophecy. And the real question is, did prophecy end in the Old Testament, or at least at the end of the apostolic age? And so I want you to write a one-page post using biblical support and outside research, answering the questions. In your opinion, does prophecy still exist today? If not, why not? What biblical support do you have that says prophecy is something that is of the past? Or, if so, how do you determine whether prophecy is truly from God? In other words, someone says, I have a prophetic word for the congregation. How do you know that that prophetic word is from God and not just from the individual? This is an important and emotional topic, so please engage with differing arguments without condemning positions. Rather, use discussions to dig deeper into each other's ideas, thoughts, and positions. As always, our first post is due on Friday with ongoing discussion over the weekend, concluding on Monday at midnight Central Time. Last thoughts. First, thank you for all the work that you guys are doing in the course. I appreciate the efforts that you are making. I appreciate your timely work on the projects. Please put your name in the file name as always, and email me or call me with any questions. Have a great week, and I will talk to you soon.